Welcome, everyone. Welcome for the person on site and also the one online. So today we'll talk about DDataflow, and this is an open source library to for end-to-end testing of ML pipelines. And the presentation is around 20 minutes, so we'll have plenty of time for questions. So please write them in Slidos. That's, I think, the most interesting part. So yeah, let's get started. First, I'm Theo. I'm French, living in Berlin, and I'm a data science manager at GetYourGuide, and I'm also active in the PyData Berlin chapter. And in free time, I also like to go on my bike and try to find the best baker croissant or chocolatier in town. Yes. Jean?
Hello, everybody. I'm Jean. I'm Brazilian, also data science manager in GetYourGuide for the Growth Data Products team and machine learning platform. Yeah, I personally am very big enthusiast of kind of building tools and systems for kind of humans that eventually runs in computers. So this is a little bit of the background also. We both kind of work in GetYourGuide building ML pipelines day to day, and kind of we always have this question how to test the systems, and DDataflow is one big progress in our view on how to do that. So I'll break down the agenda for today. So first we're going to talk about the challenges around testing ML pipelines, then our journey to DDataflow, and then Theo will get practical and show us kind of a demo on how to do that. And finally, we're going to close with some learnings and remarks. Yeah, with that, let's talk about the challenges of ML pipeline testing. So first of all, why do we need to test? Very pragmatically thinking. Testing is about kind of changing our systems with confidence. So like I'm continuously iterating on this ML pipeline. Do I know it's still working or it's broken? And that has a big correlation with productivity. So how long do you need to discover an issue in your pipeline will kind of affect how fast can you be to change this pipeline. So having a quick feedback loop between kind of changing a pipeline and getting the outcome if it works or not is very important. But this is, one can say that about any kind of test. What are unique challenges that come with ML pipeline testing? So first of all, the data. We have big scale of data, so terabytes of data sometimes being processed in a single ML pipeline. There is like large complexity, multiple joining happening with different data sources. The errors might not be as obvious as a kind of schema error. They can be hidden into data distributions. So to catch those is much harder. Also, like the instability of the code. So like data science is very kind of research oriented. We are also always prototyping and figuring out what works best, which means that oftentimes, like we are discarding large parts of the code and kind of replacing with new ones. So like the code base of ML pipeline can change very, very dramatically. And also very important, like it's operated by diverse people with different backgrounds. Not everybody comes from an engineering background. There's a lot of folks from academia. And these people have different requirements and experiences and ability to maintain an ML pipeline. Now, like let's transition kind of in, when we talk about testing, the usual first thing that comes to mind is unit test. And we want to answer the question, does unit testing work for ML pipelines? With Theo now.
Yeah, so indeed, what we say, we first try to replicate the classical mindset of software. Let's write unit tests for that. Sounds easy. But in particular, we first try to push the unit test coverage in the critical parts. But we saw that building and maintaining these drag down the speed of the team. Indeed, what we saw is that a lot of DS code, data science code, is not unit testable. For example, how do you want to test that your model was trained? Or how do you want to make sure that the join conditions are correct? So creating good tests also is hard, and data scientists are not immune to, are not better than anyone else to create this test. And yeah, also being able to deal with all the data that you need to set up, it's tricky. The second thing also is as Jean said, it's research-oriented. And so what we do is we run a lot of experiments. And every experiment needs that we have to refactor the code in some unexpected way every time. And most of the time, the experimentation end up not positive or flat. So we can just directly throw it away. So a lot of the code that we write end up being short-lived. And finally, what we saw is that even when we had some test coverage, unit test coverage, we saw that we had a problem in the integration. So usually ML is supposed on multiple steps. And when we change step 2, what happened is the unit test maybe failed. We fix them. It worked. We say, great, it's working. And then we put in production that step 4 that is failing now. Dommage. So what happened is that we saw that at the end, we see that, so we see that it's not working at the level we wanted. So we still don't get the confidence we want. The other point we saw also is that many pipeline combines code with data. And if we want to run tests on those, we need to create realistic dummy data. In practice, we saw that most of the code that we end up for testing was around hard coding some dummy data or creating code to, having code to create realistic dummy data. And so not very scalable and very tedious to maintain. What we saw, and what we still had a problem is that we still have no link between this fake data that we create just for our unit test and the real data that will be used in production. And what happened is that we saw that sometime we had a test that worked in our dummy test data, but then when we go to production, there was some slight discrepancy, and that makes everything fail again. So what we end up having is that we struggle to implement this test and to make them lightweight so that everyone could use them and find value in it, because at the end, we still saw that we had some problem in production. And so we have limited values and a lot of struggle maintaining those. So what we said is, what we saw also in the company, that we saw that end-to-end test, when it was done right, had great value for the overall engineering department. So we saw, could we get that and try to make this happen for our ML pipeline? So yeah, Jean will follow on this journey.
Yes, so on the first steps, we tried to basically put our ML pipeline into the CI. So this is a way for us to just run your entire pipeline in the CI, and in the end, you're going to get the result. Did it work or not, right? On every change you're doing it. Yeah, this works well, of course, but there is the problem that this is still very lengthy. This can take hours, or like multiple hours, and but we felt there is a good direction here. Let's put the ML pipeline in the CI, but let's fix this lengthiness. And once analyzing that, clearly the problem is the data, or the biggest problem is the data. So can we kind of fix this problem by reducing the data we are running in the CI? And that's basically led us to sampling. And also we realized it's actually everybody would benefit from having the tests running in the CI much faster by sampling the data. So there is actually a space for a tool here. We also searched the space on kind of, is there something already done built on this space? And particularly to our stack, which is Python plus Spark, there was nothing, so we decided to build a tool. And one of the core trade-offs of the DDataflow is basically how to do sampling. And there is 2 overall strategies. You do it centralized in basically one single place. Let's say you have a new data warehouse, which just have all your tables sampled in a much smaller and faster to execute. So you just change the name of the database. The other option is like the decentralized one, which is every ML pipeline will have their kind of sampling logic, and they kind of will do that by themselves. There are pros and cons as everything in engineering. So the centralized option is much easier to get started with a new integration. You just create a new project, change the database name, and that's all you have. But the cost of that is maintaining decentralized infrastructure. You have to have somebody to take care of it. And once again, you have this problem that Theo mentioned on the disconnect between the data in production and testing. And so we decided to analyze the decentralized option. And The pros is that you always have the real data flowing through your system. You have control over sampling on your system, but the cons is that there is much more kind of a heavier setup to get started in your own system to create your own sampling logic. After analyzing these options, we kind of opted for decentralization because it's more scalable option, allows one to be self-service and understand completely in their own pipeline what are kind of the constraints and logics around sampling. With that, let's move on to
let's get a bit more practical here. So what we first want, what we need basically when you have the DDataflow, you first need to declare your data sources. So you will have, wait, can you see? Yes, the data sources. So you have your tools, and then you define how you want to read the table, and also specify the filter that you want to use when you want to sample. And so you need to set all your things, then you initialize your classes, and you're done. And you can basically just use them. And so what happened is basically you have different modes. We'll go through them and also show it in a demo. So the first one is when you have DDataflow enabled. So basically here you have your data sources here. And what you want to do is you want to sample them because you want to run in the CI in a faster way. So you don't want to, you would just want to have a small part of the data. And basically DDataflow will take care of sampling and having just a small data set that you use. Then if you are disabled, that means that you want to go to production, your system is ready, then you want to go to the data sources, and this time they go directly, the full data set will go to your data product, your system that you want to train your model or for predicting on everything, etc. And the last one, what we saw also is the local development. We also end up having, if we want to be able to quickly iterate offline. So what we can have is you have the data sources, you can sample them so they are in a reasonable size, and then you can download them and being able inside your laptop to have this sample data that you can use directly. Okay, so let's go to, so basically here's the full view, and now let's go to the demo, and basically we'll show here in a Databricks notebook how you can use it. So basically first you need to install it. Once it's installed, and I really pray for the Wi-Fi to work. So basically here you need to define your data sources. And here I'm using some open source thing, open data set about the flights, the flight delays, and there is two files, basically one around the delays and the other one about the airport code. So here you define your source, and you define also your filter. And let's say for us right now, what makes sense as a filter, that's where we want to be. Every project is different. So let's say for us that we just care about the one where the origin airport start with the letter B. So we just have a much smaller data set for here. So let's do that. And also you can also have any kind of filter, basically. You define it in your function. So once you have that, let's enable the DDataflow and let's run it. And what we'll see, basically, we see that we have the filter set, and what happened is basically you see for the origin, they all start with the letter B because we have the DDataflow enabled. So if you remember, we will filter the data to not have all the full data set, but just a part of it. And same here, we see that we just have 100 rows as we have defined in our limit here. Okay, so that's basically it, right? You have your small data set, and you can iterate on your model, train your delay prediction, whatever, with this small data set. And once it's done, what you can do, you can disable the DDataflow. That means now you want to run it on your production pipeline. And what you can just do here, you will see, is now the sources that you use will be the full data set. So the origin start with the letter A. So you have all of them. You have more than 10,000 rows. And here, so you have, in practice, yeah, you have a lot of rows, more than 100,000 rows. And the data source, the second one, also have all them. So basically, that's how it helps you. And also what you can also sample it and save it in a location. And then you will see that you will have them saved in your DBFS. Okay. And that's basically where the sample data is. And now what I will show is how you can also download it locally. And here I need to increase the size. Probably that's enough. And basically here again, I have my DDataflow config, where I define my sources. And then I have the demo. And here what I need to do is DDataflow, current project. I download the data sources. Please Wi-Fi. It worked before. Yes. In a reasonable amount. So, and basically load it into your in a home directory, but not loading terabyte, just the filtered one. And once this is done, we can run our Python demo. And here we enable offline. And basically, instead of trying to go to DBFS, which it has no access to, it will basically use the sample data that you had. And we'll see by showing setting Spark is always a bit. And here again, you see the different, the small data sets that you have. You have production data sampled, but already available on the machine. And if you want to update that because you have new data, then you just need to rerun that. Okay, that's it. And now, Jean.
Cool. So to wrap up, yeah, we have DDataflow integrated in most of our production data products. We find it succeeded in kind of allow us to change quicker with confidence. We see like 3 or 4 times faster kind of pipeline run on average on these pipelines. It's very ROI, return on investment positive into kind of adding these tests. So like we often say also like, it's not that we're saying don't use unit tests, but at least have one integration test in your system. So that will give you a lot of confidence that everything is working. And this is a just very, very cost-effective way to do that. And that's basically it. We're looking for your feedback, and we go to the questions now. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, guys. Let's start with online questions, and there are many. I just give them to you, and you can decide which are the best because they are very technical, and I think you can group them better than I.
Okay, first I will just
maybe take one and answer, and I pick another.
Okay, I will read it through. So right now I have the first one. How does unit testing is possible when you have to work with cloud framework, for example, SageMaker? Unit testing basically should be run as part of your CI, and I think SageMaker is more on the I worked with SageMaker but a long time ago, and basically what I remember is that we had a CI and that was pushing to SageMaker afterwards. SageMaker have changed probably a lot since then, but I think the point here is unit testing should be part of your CI/CD, and SageMaker should be part of your deployments, but it might have changed. Okay. I will make it as answered. The second question. Have you used DDataflow in cloud, AWS, GCP, or is your difficulties to work with like debugging and testing? You want to take this one? The first one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, we are on cloud, right? So I'm not sure if I got the question fully, but our CI is on Kubernetes. Our kind of production systems are also either Kubernetes or Databricks. So this is running on cloud, and it works as very well. So
yeah. So we mainly stay on the Databricks level, which is a data provider that can live on top of AWS or GCP or Azure actually. And so we stay at this level, and it works really well. That's exactly why we needed that, because all the data we have are on cloud because it cannot fit in our machine. Okay. If you are sampling data, how can you verify accuracy of trained model? Good question. Sorry. We care about training a model for testing to make sure it's able to train, it's just not getting null. But of course, you will not get the best model if you just run out sample data. But that's exactly the point. We want to be able to train quickly, which we don't expect to get the full accuracy, but at least it should not be 0 in accuracy. That means that we have something wrong. And that's exactly the point of this, is to have that as part of CI. Once the CI is passing, what we want to do is train the model on the full data set, but we know it will take hours. So we prefer to be able to train a simple model for in a few minutes or 10 of minutes, and then if this is passing because the accuracy is above 50%, so better than random, then you can train a real model and really check afterward if the accuracy you want is passing your threshold of what you want to put in production.
Okay, let's do 2 more questions and go to the offline questions.
To add to this, I mean, you can also do flags, is DataFlow enabled and not, and then have kind of optional checks that will kind of check your overall steps when you know the data is complete and you need kind of further assurances that your system is working. So this assertion-based system is kind of works very well with this way of working. So you can have, also Great Expectations is a tool that does that well and works well with this approach.
Mm-hmm. So next one, when copying data from production, how do you make sure that the table create meaningful joins, i.e. rows in table A have the respective row in table B? I imagine that table A is in production and table B is in the test. So we read the data from production and we sample it, so we just get but you have all the rows still. I mean, you have all the columns, and then you define how you want to select the rows, and then you copy everything. And every time we run this, we overwrite it. So we make sure that we have all the same columns here. One more? Or,
yeah, we have plenty of time.
Okay, great. What is the expected result of a pipeline test? Product data changing all the time. That about reproducibility. Very good points. So we have to change our approach around testing. We cannot say that accuracy should be 0.56 because data, we train on latest data and data is changing over time. However, what we can have is we expect accuracy to be above random. And so we can see that that's the kind of level that we want. And actually, that's the thing that you want in your model is if your data is changing, you still want that when you push a new model, you still want to know that with the data that will be trained on, or at least a sample, it should have some kind of some assertion that are possible, like accuracy above a certain threshold, because otherwise it means that there is probably something wrong with your data or how you process your data that might be true 6 months ago when you trained last time or 1 month ago, but it's not true anymore. So probably good that it failed now.
Now we're switching to your questions. Please raise your hand if you want to ask something. Wait a second.
So thanks for a presentation. So from my understanding, this DDataflow requires one table to be set up in order to use it. And what if the ML pipelines need to join multiple tables? Do we need to merge it first into one table in order to use it, or do you have some feature to deal with that?
Let me take the first version of it. So, I mean, you at the moment, the kind of simple way to do it is to map all the tables. You have to mention them. By experience, we kind of, I mean, even the most complex pipelines in our case don't get more than 30 tables, although that could be different from your other use cases. But yeah, I mean, there's more one can do in terms of automation, sort of as an open source tool where you can already kind of automatically look into your data catalog and kind of inquire and have some sort of default sampling. Sampling kind of is a very broad topic, right? We could kind of we have already some default sampling, which is very naive, but we could have it kind of more kind of sophisticated, understanding what are the needs and kind of trying to optimize that. But we didn't touch so much that topic as is kind of, the ROI is also not very positive for us at the moment.
We only need one table.
I mean, you can map as many tables as your system has, but you have to do them manually as they are here. For instance, this is a file, but could be a table, right? Spark would have sort of very similar API to read a table.
We are not limited to one table. You can have as many like data sources, and if you want 50, I mean, we never tried once, but I don't know how many keys you can have in the dictionary, but I think we're safe in this.
Which data formats do you use, and which data formats are supported by DDataflow? Like you have CSV here, an example. But
yeah, it's limited by Spark, basically. What Spark supports, we support. So any kind of standard format, I would say.
But if you save like the sample data locally,
then it's Parquet in behind the scenes. But as long as you're using the API of DDataflow, you don't care about the format. Mm.
Yeah, thank you for your presentation and the product. My question is, you showed a lot of cons for unit tests and why it's not working for ML. I mostly agree with them, but I just want to clarify your point. You want to replace the unit tests with this pipeline testing, or you still give us idea to have both unit tests and pipeline testing at the same time?
I would take that first. Yeah, I mean, I said in the end, this is not saying unit test doesn't have a place. I mean, there is many places where you don't have these problems of big data, or like you have very composable functions, for instance, things that doesn't have a side effects, libraries and so on. Those things are all unit testable and still make sense to do that, I would argue. Yeah, so, but as said also before, like I will always make sure to have at least one integration test in your production pipeline. The other things are kind of nice to have, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Thank you. We have online question now.
Yeah. For a non-Databricks user, is the data located in cloud storage, or are you dealing with separated cloud computing accounts due to governance, stat prod? Ooh, good question. We don't have this problem. Everything is one cloud, so I cannot really answer this one. If you sample from different data sources and these samples need to be joined with each other, how do you guarantee that the sample match? Yes, that's exactly the problem. That's why we want to have the flexibility of defining the samples. For example, my team were mainly working on ranking, where we try to join what thing have been seen to one thing that have been booked, and we mainly join them on some UUID. So we want to sample on this UUID to have the same hash to select which one will be selected from each other's, because otherwise, if we were hashing them, I mean, if we were sampling them randomly, if we sample 1% of the impression, 1% of the bookings, the intersection, if we randomly sample them, will be very, very low, 0.001, or yeah, something like that. So that's why we want to have this sample that we're able to change, so that we need to understand, you need to understand the code to define how you want to sample. Great, we still have 2 minutes, right?
Yeah, we have 2 minutes
Yeah.
more.
Oh, no.
Just stay here and slow down like this.
It does. So does the DDataflow only work with Spark? What if I use a different data processing technology like Ray?
Yeah, I mean, that would require a major refactoring, but not impossible, I would say.
We are happy to get contributions, so if you want to help with that, it will be amazing.
Yeah.
One more question from the audience. Who's brave? Okay.
So you mentioned you can sample based on a specific ID that's across multiple tables. Was this shown in the example of the code?
Okay, I can go here, but basically here let's imagine that our ID is the origin. So it's not in the example that I show here, but basically here the filter is on origin start with letter B. And here I put another filter, but I could have put the same filter here to make sure that's, because if you want to join these two tables on the origin column, I should put them here basically. So what we had in our code, basically we have some kind of filter sample function that we apply among all the data sources to make sure they are sampled the same way, in a deterministic way.
So we get the IDs or any identifiers from the first extracted data frame and then pass it on to the second one?
So just to make sure, so basically here you define how you want to read your data, and at the end you have a data frames. The second thing, the filter, you define what filter you want to apply to your data frame if you want to filter. So you can select on a column and define that your column you only want to have a column that a string needs to start with a certain letter. That's a way of sampling. Or you want to hash certain columns, and only if it's I mean, to get a certain percentage, but in a deterministic way, right? And if you want to later join on this specific column another table, you can apply the same filter for this other table, because if you want to join on this specific condition, then you need to do the same thing there. You will say, okay, this column also needs to be sampled using the same logic, so that only you keep the rows that have the same ideas or the same values.
Thank you.
Just to chime in, like, I mean, this is a Lambda, right? So you can reuse your filters also and kind of stack them into kind of well-structured modules and functions and so on.
Okay. I think we are running out of time. So we also have the documentation ready. You can find it on DDataflow, GetYourGuide /DDataflow. That's it. And we stay around after if you have more questions.
Yes, thank you very much, Theo. Thank you, John.